A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton. Chapter 6. The Yoga Which Conquers Death. Brahma expresses a wish that I shall visit his dwelling. He tells me that he does not actually stay in the house, but has erected a roomy hut in the garden at the rear, so as to keep his freedom and preserve his independence. Accordingly, and I must confess this with some eagerness, I call at the house one afternoon. The building stands on a dusty street, which bears a desolate and neglected air. I stand for a moment outside the ancient whitewashed structure and survey the wooden upper story, whose projecting window is so reminiscent of our medieval European houses. I push open the heavy old door which confronts me, an act which sends a rattling echo through the rooms and passages. An old woman whose motherly smile stretches broadly across her face appears almost at once and bows repeatedly before me. She leads me through a long, darkened passage until we emerge through a kitchen into the backyard. The first thing I notice is a spreading peepul tree, and then, under the protective shade of its branches, an old-fashioned well. The woman guides me to a hut on the other side of the well, and close enough to it to receive some of the tree's shade. It is lightly built of bamboo posts, thin wooden crossbeams, and a thatched grass roof. The dame, whose face is as black as Brahma's, becomes visibly excited and bursts out into a series of trembling Tamil sentences, apparently addressed to the hut. A musical voice answers from within. The door slowly opens, the yogi appears, and then affectionately draws me into his simple hermitage. He omits to close the door. The widow remains in the entrance for the next few minutes, her eyes glued upon me, her face exuding indescribable happiness. I find myself in a plain room. A low, cushionless divan, D-I-V-A-N, divan, stands along the farther wall, and rudely made wooden bench, which is littered with papers, fills a corner. A heavily chased brass water pot hangs by a cord from one of the roof beams. The floor is covered with a large piece of matting. "Seat yourself," says Brahma, waving his hand toward the floor. "We have no chairs to offer you. I am sorry." We all squat around the mat, Brahma, myself, and a young student teacher who has attached himself to me and is now acting as an interpreter. Within a few minutes, the old widow departs, only to return later with a pot of tea, which is served upon the mat in lieu of a table. She departs again and reappears with biscuits, oranges, and plantain fruits, which are heaped upon brass dishes. Before we begin to take these pleasant refreshments, Brahma produces a garland of yellow marigolds and hangs it around my neck. I am astonished and protest strongly, for I know that this Indian custom is usually reserved for distinguished persons, and I have never classed myself in that sublime category. "But, brother," he pleads smilingly, "you are the first European to visit my abode, and the first to become my friend. I must express my delight, and the delight of this lady here, by honoring you in this way." My further protests proved to no avail. I have perforce to sit on the floor with a wreath of marigolds draped ceremoniously over my jacket. I am indeed glad that Europe is sufficiently far away for none of my friends to notice this odd sight and laugh at me. We drink our tea, eat the fruit, and chat pleasantly for a while. Brahma informs me that he has built the hut and made the rude furniture with his own hands. The sight of the papers on the corner bench arouses my curiosity, and I beg him to tell me their raison d'etre, for I observe that the papers are all of a pink color, and they have been written on in green ink. Brahma picks up a handful, which I perceive are written in quaint characters, easily recognizable as Tamil. The student teacher examines the documents, but finds them hard to read and harder to understand. He informs me that they are written in an obsolete form of Tamil, which was the literary form of early centuries, but is nowadays understood only by a few persons. He adds that the great classics of Tamil philosophy and literature are unfortunately written in this archaic form of language, which is called High Tamil, and which represents more difficulties for those only familiar with the modern living vernacular than medieval English presents to the average present-day English-knowing person. These papers are written by me mostly at night, Brahma explains. Some of them are accounts of my yoga experiences, written in verse, and some are lengthy poems, which I let my heart speak its religion. And some are lengthy poems where I let my heart speak its religion. There are a few young men who call themselves my pupils who often come here to read these writings aloud. Brahma picks up an artistic-looking document which consists of a few pages of pink paper written on in red and green inks, tied with a green ribbon, and smilingly presents it to me. I have written this especially for you, he declares. The young interpreter finds it to be a poem of 84 lines. It opens and closes with a mention of my name, but beyond this, the young man can hardly travel. He deciphers occasional words and tells me that the poem evidently contains some kind of personal message, but it is written in such high Tamil that he is not competent to read a proper translation of it. However, I am extremely pleased to receive this unexpected gift, especially as an expression of the yogi's goodwill. After the celebrations of my visit are finally over, the old lady departs and we settle down to serious talk. I plunge anew into that matter of breathing, which seems to play so important a part in yoga, and which is wrapped in such secrecy. Brahma regrets that he can show me no further exercises for the present, but he is willing to tell me a little more of his theories. Quote, nature has measured out 20,600 breath rhythms to each man, which he must use up daily and nightly from one sunrise till the next. Quickly, noisy, and tumultuous. Quick, noisy, and tumultuous breathing exceeds this measure and therefore shortens one's life. Slow, deep, and quiet breathing economizes this allowance and so lengthens life. Every breath which is saved goes to build up a great reserve, and out of this reserve a man can draw extra years. This reserve of the yogi tantalizes me. Is it possible that a knowledge which is hidden away with so much pains can have something of real worth in it? If that really is the case, then one can understand why these strange men cover up their tracks and conceal the treasure of their teachings in order to ward off the superficially curious, the mentally unready, and perhaps the spiritually unworthy. Is it likely that I too may have come within one of the latter classifications, and eventually leave the country with little more than my trouble for the reward? But Brahma is speaking again. Quote, have not our masters the keys to the powers of wealth? They know how close is the connection between the blood and the breath. They understand how the mind, too, follows the path of the breath. And they have the secret of how it is possible to awaken awareness of the soul through workings of the breath and thought. Shall I not say that breath is but the expression in this world of a subtler force, which is the real sustainer of the body. It is this force which hides in the vital organs, though it is unseeable. When it leaves the body, the breathing stops in obedience, and death is the result. But through the control of the breath, it is possible to get some control over this unseeable current. But though we bring our body under extreme control, even to the point of controlling the beats of the heart, do you think that our ancient sages had only the body and its powers in view when they first taught our system? Whatever I think about the ancient sages and their purpose disappears in the intense curiosity which is suddenly aroused in my mind. Can you control the working of your heart? I exclaim in surprise. My self-acting organs, the heart, the stomach, and the kidney, have been brought to some degree of obedience, he answers quietly, without a trace of boastfulness. How do you do that? One gains the power by practicing certain combinations of posture, breathing, and willpower exercises. Of course, they belong to the advanced degrees of yoga. They are so difficult that few persons can ever do them. Through these practices, I have conquered somewhat the muscles which work the heart, and through the heart muscles, I have been able to go on and conquer the other organs. This is indeed extraordinary. You think so? Place your hand upon my chest just over the heart and keep it there. And with that, Brahma changes his position and takes up a curious posture and closes his eyes. I obey his command and then wait patiently to see what's going to happen. For some minutes he remains steady as a rock and almost as motionless. And then the beating of his heart begins to diminish gradually. I am startled to feel it becoming slower and slower. A thrill of eeriness spreads over my nerves as I distinctly feel his heart completely stop its rhythmic function. The pause lasts for about 7 anxious seconds. I try to pretend that I am hallucinated, but my nervousness is such that I know the attempt is useless. As the organ returns to life from its seeming death, relief seizes me. The beat begins to quicken, and normality is safely reached at the end. The yogi does not emerge from this motionless self-absorption till some minutes later. He slowly opens his eyes and asks, "Did you feel the heart stop?" "Yes, most distinctly. I am certain that there was no hallucination about this feat. What other yogi tricks can Brahma play with his internal mechanism, I wonder?" As if in answer to my unspoken question, he says, "It is nothing compared with what my master can achieve. Sever one of his arteries, and he is able to control the flow of blood. Yes, even stop it. I too have brought my blood under some measure of control, but I cannot do that. Can you show me that control?" He requests me to take his wrist and grip it, where I feel the flow of blood through his artery. I do so. Within 2 or 3 minutes, I become aware that the curious rhythm which beats under my thumb is lessening. Soon it comes to a definite halt. Brahma has brought his pulse to a stop. I anxiously await the resumption of circulation in his artery. A minute passes, but nothing occurs. A second minute, during which I am acutely conscious of each second, likewise ticks away in my watch. The third minute is equally fruitless. Not until halfway through the 4th minute do I become conscious of a faint return to activity within the artery. The tension is relieved. Before long, the pulse beats at its normal rate. How strange, I exclaim involuntarily. It is nothing, he modestly replies. This seems to be a day of strange feats. So, will you not show me another? Brahma hesitates. Only one more, he says at length, and then you must be satisfied. He looks thoughtfully at the floor and then he announces, I shall stop the breath. But then you will surely die, I exclaim nervously. He laughs, but ignores my remark. Now, hold your hand flat against my nostrils. I obey him, hesitantly. The warm caress of exhaled air touches and retouches the skin of my hand. Brahma closes his eyes. His body becomes statuesque in its steadiness. He appears to fall into a kind of trance. I wait, continuing to hold the back of my hand immediately under his nose. He remains as still and unresponsive as a graven idol. Very slowly, very evenly, the caress of his breath begins to diminish. Ultimately, it completely ceases. I watch his nostrils and lips. I examine his shoulders and chest. But in no single case can I discover any external evidence of respiration. I know that these tests are not final, and I wish to make a more exhaustive test. But how? My brain works rapidly. There is no hand mirror in the room, but I find an excellent substitute in a small, polished dish. I hold the dish under his nostrils for a moment, while again in front of his lips, its shining surface remains unmarred by any dullness or moisture. It seems impossible to believe that in this quiet, conventional house, near a quiet, conventional city, I have established contact with something significant, something that Western science may one day be forced to recognize against its will. But the evidence is there, and it's indubitable. Yoga is really more than a worthless myth. When Brahma ultimately emerges from his trance-like condition, he seems a little tired. Are you satisfied? He asks, with a fatigued smile. I am more than satisfied, but I am at a loss to understand in what way you can do it. It is forbidden for me to explain. The restraint of breath is a practice which is part of advanced yoga. To a white man it may seem foolish to strive for, yet to us it is of much importance. But we have always been taught that man cannot live without breathing. Surely that is not a foolish idea. It is not foolish, nevertheless it is not true. I can hold my breath for 2 hours if I wish. Many times I've done that, but I am not yet dead, you see. Brahma smiles. I am puzzled. If you are not permitted to explain, perhaps you can throw a little light upon the theory behind your practices. Very well. There is a lesson we can draw from watching certain animals, which is a favored method of instruction with my master. An elephant breathes much more slowly than a monkey, yet it lives much longer. Some of the large serpents breathe much more slowly than a dog, yet they live far longer. Thus, creatures exist which show that slowness of breathing may possibly prolong age. If you can follow me so far, the next step will be easier for you to grasp. Now, in the Himalayas, there are bats which go into winter sleep. They hang suspended in the mountain caverns for weeks, yet they do not draw a single breath until they again awaken. The Himalayan bears, too, will sometimes sink into trance. Throughout the winter, their bodies, apparently without life, in deep burrows of the Himalayas, when food cannot be found during the winter, there are hedgehogs which pass into sleep for some months, a sleep in which breathing is suspended. If these animals cease to breathe for a time and yet live, why should not human beings be able to do the same? His statement of curious facts is interesting, but it is not so convincing as his demonstration. The common notion that breathing is an essential function in every condition of life is not to be thrown aside at a few minutes' notice. We Westerners will always find it difficult to understand how life can continue in a body unless breathing continues also. Life always continues, he answers cryptically. Death is but a habit of the body. But surely you cannot mean that it may be possible to conquer death? I inquire incredulously. Brahma looks at me in a strange manner. Why not? There is a tense pause. His eyes search me, but they do it in a kindly way. Because there are possibilities in you, I can tell you one of our old secrets, but I must first demand your agreement to one condition. And that? You shall not attempt to practice any breathing exercise as an experiment, except those which I may teach you later. I agree. Keep your word then. Now you have hitherto believed that the complete stoppage of breathing brings death. Yes. Is it not reasonable to believe also that the complete holding of the breath within one's body keeps life within us for so long as the breath is held, at least? Well, we claim no more than that. We say that an adept in breath control, who can completely retain his breath at will, thereby retains his life current. Do you grasp that? I think so. Imagine now an adept in yoga who can keep the locked breath not merely for a few minutes as a curiosity, but for weeks, for months, or even years. Since you admit where there is breath, there must be life, do you not see how the prospect of prolonged life opens up for a man? I am dumb. How can I dismiss this assertion as preposterous? Yet how can I accept it? Does it not recall to memory the idle dreams of our European alchemists of medieval times, dreamers who sought an elixir of life, but who succumbed to the sickle of death one by one? But if Brahma is not self-deceived, why should he seek to deceive me? He has not sought my company, and he makes no effort to acquire disciples. A strange fear touches my brain. What if he is merely mad? No, he seems so sensible and rational in other matters. Would it not be better to regard him as mistaken? Yet something in me doubts even that conclusion. I am bewildered. Can I not convince you? He speaks again. Have you not heard the story of the fakir who was buried by Ranjit Singh in a vault at Lahore? The burial of the fakir took place in the presence of English army officers, while the last of the Sikh kings watched it himself. The living tomb was guarded by soldiers for 6 weeks, but the fakir emerged healthy and alive. Inquire into this story, for I have been told that it is written somewhere in the records of your government. This fakir had brought his breathing under great mastery and could control it at will without danger of dying. Yet he was not even an adept in yoga, for I have heard from an old man who knew him when he was alive that his character was not good. His name was Haridas, Haridas, and he lived in the north. And if this man could live in an airless space for such a long time without breathing, how much more can be done by true masters of yoga who practice in secret and will not perform these marvels for gold? And then there's a footnote here that says, I have since verified this reference, and I find the actual episode occurred in 1837 at Lahore. The fakir was buried in the presence of King Rajit Singh, Sir Claude Wade, W-A-D-E, and Dr. Hornigberger, and others. A guard of Sikh soldiers watched the grave day and night to prevent fraud. The fakir was dug up alive 40 days later. Fuller particulars can be found in the archives at Calcutta. A pregnant silence followed our conversation. There exist other strange powers which can be acquired by the way of our yoga, but who in these degenerate days will pay the heavy price to obtain them? There was another pause. We who live and work in the everyday world have sufficient to do without seeking such powers, I venture, in defense of my epoch. Yes, agrees Brahma, the path of body control is only for the few. Therefore, the teachers of our science have kept it a silent secret through the centuries. It is not often that they seek after pupils. Pupils must seek after them. And that concludes that section of that chapter. Wow, well, that was certainly interesting. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you'll come back and join me for the next part of this chapter. Till soon. A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton, Chapter 6, Part 2. The next time we meet, Brahma visits my quarters. It is evening, and we soon adjourn for dinner. After the meal and a short rest, we go out on the moonlit veranda, where I plant myself in a deck chair, while the yogi finds a mat on the floor more comfortable. For several minutes we silently enjoy the bright radiance of the full moon. As I have not forgotten the astonishing events of our last meeting, it is not long before I broach anew this incredible matter of men who snap their fingers at death. Why not? Brahma asks his favorite question. There is an adept in our yoga of body control who is hidden among the Nilgiri hills here in the south. He never stirs from his retreat. In the north there lives another whose home is a cave upon the Himalayas. These men you cannot meet, for they disdain this world. Yet their existence is a tradition among us, and we are told they have extended their lives to hundreds of years. You really believe this? I exclaim in deferential doubt. Without a doubt. Have I not the visible example of my own master? A question which has been on my mind for many days presses itself to the fore again. Heretofore, I have hesitated in voicing it, but now that our friendship has come so close, I decide to give the query a bold outlet. I look earnestly at the yogi and I ask him, Brahma, who is your master? For a while he returns my gaze, but yields no answer. He looks at me hesitatingly. When he speaks, his voice is slow and grave. He is known to his southern disciples as Yurumbu Swami, meaning the ant teacher. What a curious name, I exclaim involuntarily. My master always carries a bag of rice powder from which he feeds the ants, wherever he may be. But in the north and among the Himalayan villages, where he sometimes stays, he bears another name. Is he then perfect in your yoga of body control? Even so. And you believe that he has lived? I believe that he is over 400 years old. Brahma quietly finishes the sentence for me. There is a tense pause. I stare at him in bewilderment. Many a time he has described to me what happened during the reigns of the Mughal emperors, supplements the yogi, and he has told me stories of the days when your English India Company first came to Madras. Skeptical Western ears are unable to accept these statements. But any child who has read a history book could tell you such things, I counter. Brahma ignores my remark. He goes on. My master remembers clearly the first battle of Panipat, and he has not forgotten the days of the battle of Plassey. I recollect how he once referred to a brother disciple, one Beshuananda, as a mere child of 80 years. In the clear moonlight, I notice that Brahma's swarthy, broad-nosed countenance remains particularly unmoved while he utters these strange words. How can my brain, nurtured in the strict methods of inquiry which modern science has called forth, entertain such assertions? After all, Brahma is a Hindu and must possess some of the legend-swallowing ability of his people. It is useless to contend with him. I shall remain silent. The yogi continues. For more than 11 years, my master was a spiritual advisor to one of the old Maharajas of Nepal, the state which lies between India and Tibet. There he is known and loved by some of the village people who dwell among the Himalayan mountains. They revere him as a god when he visits them, yet he talks to them in a kindly way, in the manner of a father talking to his children. He gives no heed to caste rules, and he eats neither fish nor meat. How is it possible for a man to live so long? My thoughts involuntarily voice themselves again. Brahma looks away, seems to forget my presence. There are 3 ways in which this is possible. The first is to practice all the postures, all the breathing exercises, and all the secret exercises which comprise our system of body control. This practice must take place until one is perfect, which can be done only under a proper master who can show you in his own body what he teaches. The second way is to partake regularly of some rare herbs which are known only to the adepts who have studied this matter. These adepts carry the herbs secretly or hide them in their robes when traveling. When the time arrives for the final disappearance of such an adept, he selects a worthy disciple and makes the secret known to him and presents him with the herbs. To none else are they given. The third way is not easy to explain. Brahma stops abruptly. Will you not try? I urge. It is possible that you will laugh at my words. I assure him that on the contrary, I shall treat his explanation with due respect. Very well. There exists a tiny hole inside the brain of man. Within this hole dwells the soul. There is also a kind of valve which protects this hole. At the bottom of the spine, there comes into being the unseeable life current, which I have mentioned to you more than once. The constant loss of this current causes the body to grow old, but its control fills the flesh with new life and perpetuates it. When a man has conquered himself, he can begin to get this control by certain practices, which are known only to advanced yogis of our school. When he can withdraw this life current up his spine, Let me start that sentence again. And when he can withdraw this life current up his spine, he may then try to concentrate it into the hole in his brain. But unless he finds a master who will assist him to open the protecting valve, he cannot succeed. If he finds a master who is willing to do this, then the unseeable current will enter the hole and turn into the nectar of longevity, as we name it. It is no easy task, for ruin waits in ambush for the man who attempts it alone. But the man who succeeds can induce a condition similar to death whenever he pleases, and so obtains the victor's power when real death seeks him out. In fact, he can choose the exact moment of his death at any time, and to the severest examination he will appear to have died naturally. One who has all these three methods at his command can live for many hundreds of years. So I have been taught. Even when he dies, the worms will refrain from attacking the body. A century later, his flesh will still be free from decay. I thank Brahma for his explanation, but I wonder. I am profoundly interested, but I am not convinced. Anatomy does not know this current of which he talks, and it has certainly never known its nectar. Are these stories of physiological marvels mere superstition and misunderstandings? With them, one returned to the age of fable, the ancient days of long-lived wizards and magicians who hold the elixir of life. Yet the demonstrations of breath and blood control which Brahma has given me provide some assurance that yogic powers are not mere chimeras. That these powers can undoubtedly be responsible for the performance of feats which must appear fabulous to the uninitiated. Beyond this point, I find it difficult to walk with him. I remain respectfully silent, careful not to allow my intellectual struggles betray themselves on my face. Such powers as these would be much desired by men who are nearing the grave, Brahma resumes, but forget not that the way to them is full of danger. Can you wonder that our masters say of these exercises, quote, keep them as secret as you would keep a box of diamonds, end quote. So, you are unlikely to reveal them to me? Those who wish to become adepts should first learn to walk before they try to run. He replies with a faint smile. A last question, Brahma. The yogi nods. Where is your master now living? He has entered a temple retreat in the mountains of Nepal on the yonder side of the Terai jungle, T-E-R-A-I. Is he likely to return to the plains again? Who can foretell his movements? He may remain in Nepal for many years, or he may begin his travels again. He likes Nepal best because our schools of yoga flourishes better there than in India. You see, even the teaching of the body control differs with different schools, and ours is the Tantra school, which is better understood in the atmosphere of Nepal than among the Hindus. Brahma reverts to silence. I guess that he is dwelling in devoted thought upon this enigmatic figure of his master. Ah, if these things I have heard tonight are more real than legendary, then indeed one may catch a glimpse of what is around the corner. Man, ageless and immortal. And that's the end of that part of chapter 6. And I'd just like to pause here and make a little comment. Now, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but having read this just now, it seems to me that there's a parallel between Kundalini energy, starting at the base of the spine, moving up through the spine into the brain. And so perhaps that's what he's talking about. So if you have any thoughts on this, let me know in the comments below. Like I say, I'm not an authority on this, but it strikes me that there's a parallel here, maybe. Now there's a footnote. There are a couple of footnotes which I'm going to read just in case they're of interest to you. The first one is, it is possible that Brahma refers to the cavity caused by the 4 intercommunicating ventricles of the brain, but I am not sure. And here's the second footnote. The entire conversation, which with its amazing statements and cool assertions, now seems like a fantastic dream. My attempt to transfer it to paper is a task which more than once makes me contemplate omitting it completely from this book, as I have perforce to omit many other conversations. I do not doubt but that it will cause many superior Europeans' lips to curl in contempt of Asiatic superstition. If I finally let it pass into publication, it is at the bidding of other judgments than mine. Wow, isn't that interesting? Yes. Well, I'm in the West, and certainly here in the West, we don't hear very much about these things except peripherally. So I find this just absolutely fascinating and certainly possible, based on what I know. Anyhow, leave your comments below, and hope you'll return for the next part of this chapter. Till soon. A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton, Chapter 6, Part 3. If I do not hurry my pen, this chapter will never be brought to a close. Therefore, I shall endeavor to transfix the last memorable scene of my association with the yogi of the 5 names. The Indian night comes quickly on the heels of evening. There are no lingering sunsets, as in Europe. And as the swift dusk begins to descend on his garden hut, Brahma lights an old oil lantern and suspends it by a cord from the roof. We settle down anew. The old widow discreetly slips away and leaves me alone with the yogi and the student teacher who translates our words. The odor of burning incense touches the room with a mystical atmosphere. This evening, sad thoughts of parting steal over me. I try to brush them off, but fail. I cannot clearly tell this man, through the irritating barrier of speaking through a third person, what is in my heart. How far the novel facts and strange theories he has put forward are correct, I am little able to say, but I have appreciated his readiness to let me enter his solitary existence. I have felt at times that our hearts have drawn sympathetically near to each other, and I know now what it has meant to him to break his habitual reserve. Tonight I have made a last attempt, under the shadow of impending departure, to induce him to reveal his deeper secrets. Are you ready to abandon the life of cities and retire into a solitary place in the hills or the jungle for some years? He asks me searchingly. I must first think this out, Brahma. Are you ready to give up all other activities, all your work, renounce your pleasures, and put your whole time into the exercises of our system, and that not only merely for a few months, but for several years? I do not think so. No, I am not ready. One day, perhaps. Then I can take you no farther. This yoga of body control is too serious to become the mere sport of a man's leisure hours. I see my chance of becoming a yogi fade swiftly into nothingness. I regretfully realize that the full system, with its many years of difficult training, its rigorous and austere discipline, are not for me. But there is something else which is closer to my heart than strange powers of the flesh. I confide in the anchorite. Brahma, these powers, they're wonderfully fascinating. One day I would really like to go more deeply into your training, yet, after all, how much lasting happiness do they bring? Is there not something finer still in yoga? Perhaps I do not make myself clear. Brahma nods his head and says, I understand. We both smile. Our texts say that the wise man will follow up his practice of the yoga of body control with the yoga of mind control, he remarks slowly. It can be said that the first prepares the way for the second. When our ancient masters received the principles of our system from the god Shiva, they were told that the final goal was not to be purely material. They understood that the conquest of the body was to be looked upon as a step toward the conquest of the mind, and this again as a way to becoming spiritually perfect. So you see that our system deals with things close at hand, indeed with the body, but only as an indirect means of penetrating to the spirit. Therefore, my master has taught me, first, run your course in body control, and then you can take to the kingly science of mind control. Remember that a body which is mastered ceases to distract the mind. Only a few can plunge straight into the path of holding the thoughts. Yet, if a man feels strongly drawn to the way of mind control, we do not interfere, for that then is his path. And that is a purely mental yoga? Even so, it's a training to make the mind like a steady light, and then that light is turned on to the abode of the spirit. How can one start such training? For that, again, it is necessary to find a master. Where? Brahma shrugs his shoulders. Brother, people who are hungry look eagerly for food. Those who are starving, however, will search like madmen. When you want a master as much as a starving man wants to eat, you will surely find one. Those who search sincerely will most assuredly be led towards him at the appointed hour. You believe that there is a destiny about the matter? You speak truly. I have seen some books. The yogi shakes his head. Without a master, your books are mere pieces of paper. Our word for him, guru, means one who dispels darkness. The man whose efforts and destiny favor him sufficiently to find a real teacher steps quickly into a state of light, for the master uses his own higher gifts to benefit the disciple. Brahma moves away to his bench of littered papers and presently returns with a large document, which he hands me. It is covered with an orderly arrangement of Kabbalistic signs, peculiar symbols, and Tamil characters, drawn in red, green, and black inks. The top of the sheet is adorned with a large hieroglyphic symbol, patterned like a scroll, in which I recognize representations of the sun, moon, and the human eyes. All the sketches and writings fall around a central blank space. Last night, I spent some hours preparing this, says Brahma. When you get back, paste one of my photographs in the center. He informs me that if I will concentrate my mind upon this queer but not inartistic document for 5 minutes before going to sleep at night, I shall dream clearly and vividly of him. Even if 5,000 miles separate our bodies, place your thoughts upon this paper, and our spirits shall meet at night, he asserts confidently. And he explains that these dream meetings will be as actual and as real as our physical meetings have been so far. This brings me to mention that my trunks are all but packed and that I shall soon be off. I am doubtful when and where I may see him again. He replies that he does not doubt that whatever destiny has been allotted us must be fulfilled, and then he confides in me. I leave this place in the spring when I go to the Tanjore district, where 2 students await me. As for what will happen thereafter, who can say? For as you know, I hope one day to receive the call from my master. There is a long silence, which Brahma eventually breaks by addressing me in a voice which is lowered to a hushed whisper. I turn to the student teacher, preparing myself to receive some new revelation. Quote, "Last night my master appeared to me. He spoke to me about yourself, and he said, 'Your friend Sahib is eager for knowledge. In his last birth he was among us. He followed yoga practices, but they were not of our school. Today he has come again to Hindustan, but in a white skin. What he knew then has now been forgotten, yet he can forget for a while only, until a master bestows his grace upon him. He cannot become aware of his former knowledge. The master's touch is needed to help him recover that knowledge in his body. Tell him that soon he shall meet a master. Thereafter light will come to him of its own accord. This is certain. Bid him cease his anxiety. Our land shall not be left by him until this happens. It is the writing of fate that he may not leave us with empty hands." End quote. I draw back astonished. The lamp throws its beams of light upon the little assembly. My young interpreter's face seems stricken with awe in that yellowish glare. "Did you not tell me that your teacher was in distant Nepal?" I demand reproachfully. "Indeed, he remains there still. Then how on earth can he travel 1,200 miles in a single night?" Brahma smiles cryptically. "My master is ever present to me. Though India's span lies between our bodies, I receive his message without letter or bearer. His thought speeds through the air. It reaches me and I understand." Telepathy? If you wish. I rise, for it is time to go. We wander out on our last moonlit walk together and pass the ancient walls of the temple which stand not far from Brahma's house. The moon filigrees through the many branched trees as we halt at a lovely group of palms which borders the road. Whilst he is bidding me farewell, Brahma murmurs, "You know that I have but few possessions. This is the thing I value most. Take it." He grasps the 4th finger of his left hand and pulls at it. He holds forward the palm of his right hand. I see a golden ring glistening in the center under the rays of the moon. 8 slender claws grip a round green stone whose face is veined with reddish-brown markings. Brahma puts it in my hand as we clasp in farewell. I attempt to return the unexpected gift, but he meets my refusal by pressing it more determinedly upon me. One who enjoys a great wisdom in yoga gave this to me. In those days I was traveling far and wide for knowledge. Now I beg you to wear it. I thank him and inquire half jokingly, will it bring me good fortune? No, it cannot do that, but there is a powerful charm within the stone which will help you penetrate to the company of secret sages and which will help you to awaken your own mystic powers. This you will realize by experience. Wear it when you need these things. There is a final and friendly parting, and we go our ways. I walk slowly away, my head filled with a strange medley of thoughts. I muse over the extraordinary message from Brahma's far-off master. It is too extraordinary for me to dispute. I remain silent before it, while belief and skepticism fight a fantastic conflict in my heart. I glance at the golden ring and I ask myself, how can a mere ring possess any real efficacy in these matters? I do not understand how or why it can influence me or others in any mental or spiritual manner. The belief savors of superstition. Yet Brahma seems so confident of the reality of its fanciful properties. Is it possible? I feel almost impelled to answer. In this strange land, all things may be possible. But intellect rushes to the rescue and puts up a barricade of question marks. I fall into a fit of musing abstraction, so that I move away startled when I stumble against something and knock my forehead. Looking up, I behold the poetic silhouette of a palm tree and the fireflies making a myriad dancing points of light between the branches. The night sky is deep blue. Venice, a point of intense brightness, seems quite close. Venus, a point of intense brightness, seems quite close to our planet. Infinite peace broods over the road as I walk. A mysterious stillness enthralls me. Even the large bats, which occasionally appear and sweep over my head, move their wings silently. The scene charms me. I stop for a moment. The moon diffuses a light which turns a man who is approaching me into a flitting ghost. When I reach my quarters, I find that wakefulness lingers late this night. Close to dawn, sleep comes at last, drowning my whirl of thoughts into forgetfulness. And that concludes Chapter 6. Chapter 7 is entitled, The Sage Who Never Speaks. And I hope you'll join me there. Please like and subscribe. Till soon.